Good morning, my name is Kirsty Dignam and I'm here to look at the weekly energies with today's Monday's Musings on the 10th of November 2025. It felt like I really wanted to get that out of my system. Like, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm here to offer. And to really stand in that seems to be the invitation this week. It really doesn't matter how we do that, even though there may be more emphasis on that as the week goes on. We could get confused in trying to clarify how we do something without having the underlying roots of discovering what it is we actually do. Where does that come from? Who we actually are. This week there's a great invitation to sense into the delusions we may have. I hear the word delusions of grandeur, but not always, but the delusions we may have of who, and thank you, that's where it's coming from, feeling as if we have delusions of grandeur when we tap into our own potential this week is going to be key to recognize that the ego works in many ways. Sometimes the ego can make us act braver than we are and bring forth much needed courage and at times an arrogance, or it can do the opposite and it can really downplay who we are. And the invitation this week is to sense into where we may feel as if we are faking it until we make it, or as if there is an essence of imposter syndrome in our own behavior, and acknowledge that the division we are sensing purely comes from not recognizing our own potential and feeling into that, rooting into that. From there, deciding how you wish to take that forward in every situation. Now, I know that these readings are to do with the weekly energies, and I know that I use cards or guidance, and I know that can be seen as a more spiritual way of living. However, this includes everything that we do. Where are we doing it from? Whether that's brushing our teeth, whether that's cooking a meal, whether that's being with our loved ones, whether that's, being part of a healing with somebody, or running a workshop, or writing a book, or acknowledging where we're doing something from helps us tap into the full embodiment of our own potential, or let's call it what it is, power. There's often an ongoing fear of recognizing our light, our potential, our abilities, because we have been manipulated as a society for as long as to fear our own power, to have that taken from us, to at times give that away so as not to acknowledge the strength that we have to change things. This week we may find situations where we have been misrepresented or misinterpreting the information coming through to suit our own narrative, or the narratives that have potentially kept us safe, or the narratives that have potentially allowed others to see what they need to see. There's a big shift in frameworks occurring on a cellular core down to our very bones, and those things that no longer support us are going to be, in the smallest case scenarios, adapted, in the larger case scenarios, removed. An example, I have the dentist tomorrow on the 11/11 portal. I have a cleansing on the 22nd of November, but a appointment with a periodontist on the 11/11 portal, and there's a high chance I will have several of my teeth removed. And much as I do not want that, and I have tried my hardest not for that to happen, there comes a point where I need to acknowledge there's an infection that's getting underneath the gaps in my teeth and into the bone, which is then spreading. There is a impact that is occurring on my whole body because of my longing to hold on to something that isn't serving me well, no matter how much I may want to keep that in place. Now, that's my teeth, obviously. I share that because in old tribes, teeth were a symbolism of power. Where this week are we keeping old structures in place because they are familiar, or because we don't want to lose them, or because we don't want them to look a different way? Or, for me, losing teeth is normally symbolic in my family of death and aging, so that I have a resistance to that. Whatever that resistance may be, looking at where we are holding on to old frameworks, and in doing so allowing ourselves to continually be reinfected with old patterns, old behaviors that are now spreading to other areas of our life, our perception, our existence, our beliefs, our physical embodiment. It's time to get to the nitty-gritty of what's underneath how we respond to this world. And that does mean that this week we could very well be opened and encouraged to look at more inner child related viewpoints towards aspects such as abundance. It's left over from the full moon in Taurus, but it's going to get deeper as we go into that new moon in Scorpio. Abundance, sexuality, sensuality, belonging, love, who we are as a physical representation of that. Is there anything else? There's an encouragement to recognize some of the frameworks that do work for you. So I'm very tempted, and probably will actually this week, to look at the energies with an oracle deck rather than a tarot deck. Although I have them there, I have them to one side as a bit of a support system if needed, and that feels quite key as well. Recognizing it's not about chucking everything away. It's not about removing aspects of who you are. It's not about taking away those parts of you, those foundations that have helped you get to where you are. Use them as needed, but it's not about relying on them either. They're not everything. So the lessons that you may have been through give you great strength to be where you are at this moment in your life, but it's not all of you. It's not everything about you. Just like me with the tarot readings, it's not all I do. Okay, so I'm fully aware of that, and the way that I can keep expanding on that is to stretch myself. So one of my best foundations is that I enjoy learning. The other aspect this week is to look at what parts are in play in your life, what frameworks and structures are in play in your life that may have been seen negatively. So a lot of my desire for learning has come from perfectionism, and also curiosity, but a drive to keep understanding myself. That can be seen as a negative concept. Some things this week we may have shrugged to one side for being more, how many times can I say it, more negative. However, bringing forward the lighter aspect of that, I love to discover, I love to grow, and I love to learn, and that does mean that I stretch myself, and in that I discover other aspects of myself, which then bring forth their own healing journey. So this week, looking at frameworks that may have been comfortable, that may seem positive but are holding you back now, placing them to one side for the framework to call upon should you need so, not getting too confused with trying to understand it. I can really feel that in the third eye, and allowing the intuition of old, perhaps outdated beliefs to come forward and show us something that we are now ready to receive about ourselves. And that's where the biggest question is. Are we ready to receive that? There's a lot of shifts that have occurred. There are numerous shifts that have occurred in the world around us, in our own bodies, in our own relationships, and they will continue to occur. The question is, are we ready to receive, to integrate those changes? If we're not, there's no judgment there, but nothing will shift. Of course it won't. And we will continue to see things based on where we are. So the key, again, coming full circle, is to come back to where we are before we do anything. It's nothing new. This is nothing that we don't know. So going back to the example of my teeth, I can brush my teeth and worry about the fact that I'm going to lose my bottom teeth, and all I'm doing with that intention is, making that bigger as I'm brushing my teeth. Now, it's not to say that it's not a fact. It's not to say that it's not a potential, but it's not the only potential. The truth is, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I may get to the periodontist and she may say some deep cleaning and we can salvage those teeth. I don't know. Being open to things, being aware of what you're doing and where you're doing it from, and the impact that that has on the outcome that you are open to receive. If I continue to think that I'm just going to lose my teeth and there is no other alternative, well, there won't be. Okay, so it's not about bypassing this week, but it is about getting real with all the potential that's out there, your own included. So I am going to use the Priestess of Light Oracle for the weekly reading. And as I say that, I can feel myself feeling excitable, conflicted, because it isn't my normal practice, but also really, really wanting something more, not sustainable, more expansive. And we're going to sense that this week. We're going to sense another part of us calling for us to now embody aspects that we have pushed to one side. So for me, it's the priestess of light. I've noticed today it's very cold and miserable outside, and yet it's not cold and miserable, it's very dark and miserable outside and raining, and yet it isn't cold. And when I noticed that this morning, something really came through about embracing the darkness, embracing the change of season without being frosty, without being shut off, without being subdued or cold towards the changes that need to occur. This is a natural part of our own process. Anything that's coming up this week is a natural part of our own turning of the wheel from within us. There is greater wisdom to be had. Now I can see why I want to use the priestess of oracle deck, of light oracle deck, the high priestess, balancing ourselves between severity and mercy, recognizing we bring that harmony. We can find the light in the darkness. We can find the truth in our own delusions. This week we can use it as an opportunity to see that we are now ready to see, or remain blinded to the potential, our own included. Okay, there's something about the 1111 portal, but we'll see what comes up with that. I'm just going to tan my own gargoyle. Bless me, he's facing the wall. I've shown this little character before. Every time I've tried to connect to the angelic realm, I always get the imagery of a gargoyle. And for me, there's a big wisdom there of recognizing that divinity isn't perfect. Divinity itself isn't just angelic, or even the energy of the angelic realm isn't always this higher, lighter than light avoidance of the darkness. And this gargoyle was facing the wall, you know, feeling as if we've done something wrong, feeling as if we have to stand in the corner and have a time out this week, can actually be an opportunity to really look at where we may have had high expectations on ourselves that were unrealistic. Not unrealistic in our ability to achieve them, but unrealistic in the aspects of ourselves that we need to bring forward in order to do so. So I started doing, there's an aeroplane outside, I started doing stretches this morning and yoga, and it's something I've been trying to do for a long time, and all the time I've been spiritually trying to do it. For me, it hasn't worked. I needed that physical, less wafty version of myself to come through and give me a good swift kick up the arse, and that came through in pain that was negative, but actually when using that, it brought forth the change that was needed. So it's not that we can't achieve what we're trying to achieve. The parts of us we have led to believe can deliver what we're hoping to change aren't quite the aspects of ourselves that need to come forward now. Really working with our shadow, not being cold towards that, really bringing forward the inner child, but also the inner wild in that, and the wisdom there that's trying to come through to help support us, particularly on the 1111 portal. Very, very important to recognize that divinity isn't an aesthetically pleasing trend. Divinity is embodiment of life in all of its sources, in all of its multifaceted, often confusing, often misunderstood, misrepresented modalities and viewpoints and feelings and ways of being. So let's bring the gargoyle back to face us. Let's really look at that darker wisdom that is trying to come through, and I'm going to connect to the energies this week, and I'm going to do so initially, at least, with the Priestess of Light Oracle. Now, another reason I want to bring Oracle cards to the table is, for me, a misunderstanding in regards to the difference between tarot and Oracle cards. Now, Oracle cards seem to have this more acceptable, lighter type energy, and tarot cards still have this shadow of demonic worship or prediction or dark magic or entertainment purposes. Oracles seem to be, please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but oracles, in my own perception, what I see around me, seem to be a more aesthetically pleasing version of connecting to source or spirit, a nicer, palatable symbolism. However, Oracle cards and tarot cards are keys to the subconscious. They are imagery that allow us to recognize, to meditate, to reconnect to aspects within our own knowing. If a tarot card brings up a reaction for you, feeling into that. You may not read tarot cards, so if a situation brings up a reaction within you, feeling into that, recognizing the power of reflection, the difference between that and projection this week, to ensure that you are connecting to your greatest potential here. There's a lot coming to the surface of acknowledging that we may not be who we thought we were, or at least not just who we thought we were, that those narratives have had to be embodied for survival for many, for acceptance, for belonging, for careers, for, you know, I'm a mother. There's been many things in how I parented that I did because that's what mothers do, when actually given free rein, given that time to reflect, given that chance again, yeah, things would be different because I'm different. Acknowledging that this week, if you were given your time again, what would you do differently? And then remembering it's never too late. It's never too late. So the Priestess of Light Oracle cards are, for me personally, exactly the same as tarot cards with a little bit less structure. So they, in that, have a bit more expansion, a bit more freedom within my own psyche because there's less structure there. Now for me, that makes me wobble. I'm a fan of structure. I'm a fan of routine, you know. So for me this week, my learning will come from adopting a more free, spontaneous way of connection. What will it be for you? What will be the opposite thing that you could do this week in comparison to what you've normally done? What could you learn from that? Well, these cards are about connecting to the Priestess of Light, and they are by Sandra Ann Taylor and Kimberly Weber. Inside the box it says, become your own Priestess of Light, celebrate your eternal power in the sacred ceremony that is your life. It just feels lovely. So I'm going to have a quick of my coffee. And then we are going to look into the weekly energies and how to best navigate them according to the more divine feminine. Okay. Energies this week and how to best. Really doesn't need overthinking. We can often believe that the masculine energy, and this feels really important, guys, actually, the whole confusion that is coming with the whole masculine and feminine duality. The whole point of having a duality is so that we can learn one off of the other to have those oppositions, but then they come back to full completion. They come back into each other. So for those that know the yin yang symbol, you have black, but then you have the white within the black, and then you have the black within the white, and then they're all within a circle. So there comes a point where the separation between masculine and feminine can actually confuse the situation. It is about allowing those energies to merge. So we often see the masculine as direct and very focused. This week we are being encouraged to acknowledge that that is also the feminine. There is no separation here anymore. The changes that have occurred is an amalgamation of these polarities. And when we come into the 1111 portal tomorrow, we're going to see not just where these polarities have been pulled apart for us to acknowledge the differences between them, but where we are lacking bringing them together. Where do we stand in harmony between these opposing factors, not only externally but within us? Alexa's just gone off. I don't know what she's gone off for, but she's just gone off on cue. Okay, so underneath we have angelic assistance, divine guidance and loving support. Now what I love about this card, one is underneath. It's underneath everything. Angelic assistance or divine guidance and loving support. What does the angelic realm mean to you? What does divine guidance mean to you? What does loving support look like to you? This card, although the character has wings, she is portrayed almost in the cloak of Mary, the mother, feeling into the energy of divine nurture, the mother archetype within and around us. How solid is that for us? How connected are we to that? How has that grown or not, as the case may be? Where are we lacking harmony? So we have the number 6 here. It is all about harmony. It is all about choice, and it's all about free will. So 6 on the tree of life is right under the right where the solar plexus is, right on the path of Tiphereth, of beauty, of love, of wisdom. Are the choices that we are making, the connections that we are feeling, based around that? Where is there room for growth there? This character is dressed in white. There's an element of purity that we need to connect to. But purity doesn't, thank you, recognizing what purity means. Purity doesn't mean without flaw. Purity is integration of all aspects of us. Alignment, light, and the many different shades that it comes in. And this character is cloaked in the colour blue. We have a lot of grey and brown around us, but cloaked in the colour blue. How integrated is our communication with our own divine support and guidance? When I think of the angelic realm, I'm very scientific. And, you know, that is a structure that has supported me and at times restricted me. But it is ultimately something I will always be part of. I like to learn. When I think of the angelic realm or the angelic energy, for me, they are potential. They are a blueprint. They are what things could end up being. How are we communicating that? How are we receiving that? You know, when things come up as an opportunity to see our divine guidance, to see our higher selves, how willing are we to listen to that? This morning, yes, of course, there's a knee-jerk reaction. The last thing I want to do is do a reading with oracle cards. I want the familiarity of the tarot. I want the structure and the routine of the tarot. However, I'm also aware there's an aspect of me that is suggesting I could learn more by moving beyond my own limitations. It's an invitation. It's free will. You have free will. You don't have to do any of it. This video, I don't know you better than yourself. There's nothing outside of you that you have to take on as your own. That is not divine support. That is not loving guidance. That is patriarchy. That is authority. That is manipulation of your own power. And this week we're going to be shown where we may have preferred that sometimes. What we do with that is up to us. Okay. Gosh. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, overall we have 2 cards, and even though I've shuffled the deck, they are the 2 cards that have come up this morning, and that feels quite important, that anything that we start to receive on the Monday, on the 10th of November, to take note of this date. I hear for years to come, but on the Monday, recognizing that anything that starts to come up will help guide us throughout the week ahead. And the cards that have come up are Healing the Heart, the Power of Self-Love, and Grateful Optimism, the joyous view of the future. Now, only by going into the heart, only by providing the power of self-love, being present with everything we are feeling, everything we desire, everything we fear, everything we yearn for, everything we doubt, only by being present with that intertwining, continuous, infinite energy, can we ever be grateful or optimistic about the future. Why? Because when we're present with where we are, that determines the view of our past, which ultimately has an effect on how we see the future. It's coming back to that message earlier of acknowledging where we are before we do anything. Coming back to the heart, seeing that as one of the greatest self-care things you can do. You know, self-care has become quite a trending algorithm, okay, and it's not a chore, it's not a tick list. Self-care is not a tick list. It's not, I do it sometimes, right, yeah, I've massaged my feet, or I've painted my toenails, tick, tick, and sometimes we can be grasping at straws to show that we are trying our best, But in that, we can overcomplicate. Now, whether that's the relationship we have with ourselves, with the universe, with the things we're trying to shift or heal, or, you know, however you want to look at it, or, you know, life and the relationships we have with each other, by overcomplicating it, by trying to rush through it, we are ultimately causing the same wound. When we're rejected in our childhood for our behavior, it's not normally because people don't love us, it's because they're busy. Oh, I can't deal with that right now. Or, you know, or people haven't got the time to sit with what they're feeling. When these things happen, they're normally because time doesn't stop. We don't give something the process that it needs, and we can't move through it. Self-care is the same. It's not about rushing through it. Whether that's healing, whether that's moving blocks or getting fit, or, you know, reconnecting to our potential or spirit, these things are not to be rushed. Going back to what it said in the box about being the sacred ceremony of life. These things are to be lived. And it's living, expressing, feeling life that ultimately heals the heart. Because in that, we start to embody all aspects of ourselves. And self-love is a very powerful place to be. I'm not saying that we all like parts of ourselves. I don't like the fact that I've inherited a gum disease, that no matter what I do, I can't seem to shift, and I may ultimately lose my teeth. Of course I don't like that. I feel very disempowered with that. However, looking after my teeth as much as I can, doing my healing, visiting the proper dentist that I need to see, that has given me a truth that I'm doing all that I can to accept these parts of myself, and the rest is out of my hands. The power of self-love, to acknowledge where we've been, where we currently are, and how that affects the future. I still hold hope. I still hold hope that my dentist may be able to salvage my teeth, and that the tuning forks that I do daily and the healing that I do may help bone grow back, because I know how the human body works. I still hold hope. So this week, recognizing where doubt, disbelief, disillusion is coming from a place of not being where we are, acknowledging what the heart needs to really believe in it again, to really believe in ourselves again, and from there, with that power of self-love, allowing yourself some more joyful views of the future. Dream. Open yourself up. You are more than what has got you this far. How willing are you to receive that? My cats have just knocked something everywhere. So on the Monday, what is it all about? Well, we have creation, expansion, networking, and building of our world. We have, I love at the end of the week, we have Mary Magdalene almost sat outside a cave, but within the cave on the Monday, just happens to be number 33, the Christ consciousness. Let's go back to this Christ consciousness as well. What is the Christ consciousness? It's light, it's love, it's connection, it's wisdom. Finding that within you, okay? It's mastery, yes, thank you. It's self-mastery. Taking time out on the Monday to find that. Recognizing where you may not have given yourself enough time for that. Being with yourself. And acknowledging that anything you invest in now is going to help you build something different. There are changes around us. So much has shifted. The world has shifted. The energies have shifted. The Schumann resonance has shifted. Everything has shifted. But again, it's coming full circle to have we. And there isn't judgment there. There really isn't judgment there. It's fucking scary sometimes when you look outside and you feel as if you don't belong in the world that you're in, particularly, and I want to speak of those that are walking between the realms and how important that is. There are those that literally have one foot in how things used to be and one foot in how they are going to be. And that's an important path to walk. And it can be trippy and it can be dark and it can be confusing. And it is very, very important that you take care of yourself. Within all worlds, within all potentials, within all possibilities is a core light that is you. Keep coming back to that. And acknowledge that every time you do, you are building your own reality based on something you have yet to truly understand, embrace, and celebrate, which is another version of yourself that is slowly being integrated. Take time. There's no rush. And if you find yourself going back to old behaviors, you're human. Oh, my loves, you are human. Okay, so give yourself the benefit of the doubt. If you find yourself getting a bit narky on the Monday, or, you know, going back to behaviors that you'd rather have moved on from, recognize they're still part of you and bring them into a space where they feel safe enough to tell you what's going on. Whether that's through journaling, dancing, having a salt bath, laughing. We're human. Let go of the need for perfectionism. Perfectionism is not purity. This is a very repressed view of the Christ consciousness, a very repressed view of mastery. Mastery doesn't come from removing aspects of ourselves. It comes from welcoming them all. On the Tuesday, we then have brilliant beliefs. It's a number 45, so we have the Emperor and we have the Hierophant. And yes, I am being very drawn to recognize that I'm very much in love and drawn to routine, structure, and numerical frequency. So come the Tuesday, we may find that some of our obsessions, some of our need to understand that we believed came from a lack of direction, actually come from a very ingrained knowledge and wisdom within us. I failed maths twice, and yet numerology makes sense. Sacred geometry makes sense. So acknowledging your strengths. We have, like, it's just going to thunder. We have the Emperor and we have the Hierophant. So really taking forward those lessons that you have gained, which adds up to the 9, which is the Hermit. Go within, find that light for the brilliant clarity that it can bring forward in regards to any beliefs that you now have around your own luminous life force, around your own personal power. This isn't about the person that the world made you. This is about the person that has always been there throughout it all, allowing that to guide you forward. What do I see here? Well, I see that the jaguars walking either side of her have also lent their fur, their vision, their external appearances, their wisdom, thank you, their wisdom and their protection to this feminine. I feel my throat quite sore there. There's a new vocal way of creating coming through. It isn't chanting and it isn't just our vocabulary, but it is about recognizing and remembering languages that we may have forgotten. One of my steps I've decided to do is to start relearning the language of the Diné and also Spanish for my ancestry, but also to link into some of the indigenous ceremonies that I'm part of. It feels important to give them a voice, to give them a proper voice, to allow these translations to be more clear and authentic and original in their rooting. And on the Tuesday, that is what we're being given the opportunity of. We do have the energy of jaguar. It may be a snow leopard. For me, it's the energy of jaguar. So recognizing what the energy is for you. It may be different to others, but underneath it, what's the underlying core concept here? For me, it would be the shadow work. It would be the ability to walk that knife's edge. It would be our own wisdom found within the landscape of who we are. So Tuesday, yes, facing that shadow, enjoying that shadow, embracing that shadow, walking with that shadow. I don't know, maybe pick something that you've tried to avoid, like being overly confident or someone that's overly love and light or whatever your shadow may be, and for 10 minutes or on a phone call to someone, be that character. See how it feels. What does that person need? What does that person offer you? Like the woman here with the leopard skin or jaguar skin that she's wearing, what would it be like to wear the skin of the parts of you you've pushed to one side? How can you understand them if you're not prepared to do that? Okay. On the Wednesday, we then have hidden knowledge. Of course, we have 52. So we've taken those lessons that were given to us on the Tuesday, and we're starting to bring them into a more intuitive knowing and wisdom within us in the High Priestess, or the 2, in that inner union. I've just realized that the brilliant beliefs are on the portal. Just because they're occurring on the portal doesn't mean that's where they will stop. So be really open to the impact that whatever comes through on the Tuesday for the next remaining 6 months of your life, actually, at least. As I say, Monday is going to be a day that won't be forgotten. On the Wednesday, we have hidden knowledge, the Akashic records, and a silent understanding. So here the image is almost the same as Tuesday, but it isn't. It's in black and white. The colour has been removed. The polarities are there. There aren't any grey areas anymore. This wisdom that has come through from embodying parts of us we've avoided, yeah, the answers that they bring is actually the part we've been avoiding. You know, I have a very, very decisive, forthright part of my own femininity that I often downplay because she can come across quite harsh. But actually, when I allow that energy to come through, she gets straight to the point. And with that hidden knowledge, there comes great clarity and great decisions. And some of those decisions I don't always like. So I avoid them, which means I avoid that energy. And then I end up in a cycle of not knowing what I'm doing. So on the Wednesday, looking at the hidden knowledge, looking at the parts of you have yet to tap into because of what that hidden knowledge may bring forth. Have some silent, compassionate understanding for the fear that may have caused, particularly to the inner child. You know, the inner child, in my case, that would speak up for what they wanted, may not have come across as very appropriate in the days that I was raised, and that may have come with punishment. So feeling into the understanding that is now needed, why we have hidden that part of ourselves, but also recognizing where we are. We're not there anymore. Recognizing where we are and how safe it is to bring that part forward now. Things are black and white on the Wednesday. There is no covering it up. It's just going to lead to confusion and haziness and fogginess. And, you know, again, going back to those that walk both realms, it's not about getting stuck in the middle. It's about bringing all different potentials into that space. It's not about being, especially as we lead into the new moon in Scorpio with that depth of emotion, it's not about drowning in self-pity or drowning in confusion or getting lost in spiritual bypassing or drinking or drugs or hedonistic type energy or fear even and fawning. It's not that energy. Walking the knife's edge can be very similar to fawning. There's a great difference between not doing anything and inaction. Bring these potentials into the silence and the stillness from the Wednesday. Look at them from a different perspective as you do so, and allow that once hidden knowledge to come forward and give the clarity that is being sought on the Thursday. It's a number 5. There's planning, releasing, illusion here. It is a number 5, so it's about the real wisdom of lessons. Not just our experiences of it, but how we intend to embody that and apply it to life. That's wisdom. Lessons in the self are just knowledge. What we do with them is where the wisdom really comes in. So about taking that divine hidden knowledge and putting it into something physical come the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Here we have a woman that is now wearing an eagle. Sharp perspective, focus, clarity. What are you going after? What are you planning? How realistic is that? Where do you need to get your shit together? What do you need to start putting into place? What parts of you do not fit the narrative you now want to take forward? How can you celebrate all you have learnt from them and bring them home in completion? It's not about getting rid of them. You know, that these things have taught us many things like endurance or strength or compassion or whatever. It's not about getting rid of them. It's about no longer seeing them as separate and bringing them back to the whole so that we can move forward now. Okay. On the Friday, we then have death and rebirth, and these jaguars have turned into panthers, or they could very well be black jaguars. The cave has become a tree, and it feels very ancestrally linked. We're still in that energy of ancestors, and I do feel as if we're open to it, that energy will remain. Actually, it has the potential to stay a lot more. It's almost like there's been quite an awareness, this thinning of the veil of the deep wisdom and connection that is available in our own ancestry. It doesn't feel so separate anymore, and if we allow that, that could be an ongoing thing. The veils are much thinner, and it doesn't feel as if they're going to become so separate anymore. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about this potential world being our world? This where things don't always make sense, this walking of the knife's edge, this being aware of so many different realities and yet still being able to stand in our own. How do we feel about that? Well, it's the number 19. So we do have the magician energy there. What are we bringing down? What are we creating with? We also have the hermit there. It's a great opportunity to see the light that actually guides us forward. But added together, we have 19, which is the sun card, the inner child. We can still find joy and love and creativity in this space. It may feel new, it may feel not normal, it may feel as if we've been promoted at work or we've got a new job role and we don't know what the hell we're doing with it. But what brings us joy? Tap into that energy, tap into the innocence and the light of who we are, and then just put it in everything that we do. What we do really doesn't matter. Who we are within it defines what we're becoming and what that outcome will be. That, come the Friday, is going to bring forth quite a sharp death and rebirth. That is going to bring all those elements of darkness into light. And that does mean we are going to be shown places where we haven't taken responsibility for that. Now, I don't mean responsibility as in punishment or, authority or we should be better, or I mean we haven't felt our responses and our ability. We haven't recognized our ability to do that. And as I close my eyes, I see a great big rainbow circle. We haven't acknowledged that as humans, in our many multifaceted colors, we have the ability to feel these things, and it's okay and it's safe. It's safe to feel gnarly. It's okay to feel miserable. It's great to feel happy. It's wonderful to feel clarity, but some of these things don't come without confusion. These are an ongoing spectrum of emotions. They're all welcome. They're all welcome in the new world, in the old world, and whatever you want to see it. They're all welcome because you are welcome. But it is important that you take the ability to be aware of your responses to the next level, and not so that you can be judged on that or know better or anything like that, but so you can learn to create with it. So you can take this perceived darkness and bring it to light and create with it. It's a power that's been untapped. The shadow is a power that is untapped. Our gnarly little emotions that we don't want to face are powers that have been untapped. Hidden within them is great treasure. Recognize your ability to feel them. You are stronger than you were because of everything that's happened. Sit with yourself. The veil between who you were and who you're becoming is also a lot thinner, and you may feel conflict with that. You may feel as if you're drawn in different directions all the time. You think they're separate. They're not. They've always been about your own becoming. On the Saturday, we have innovation, and from this perspective, we have something new being born. We have 20, however, the card 20, which is the card judgment, also the high priestess and the fool. So can we take this wisdom and create something different? Can we see this in a different way? Can we explore the path in front of us, or are we going to judge it based on our old perceptions and our old wounds? And this is where the invitation is to really look at how we innovate with what we are experiencing. To even know what we're experiencing. If we don't, how on earth can we create anything different from it? Doesn't feel like I want to get too much into that. Either side, she has a eagle either side in her hands and lots of light. She also has the, so she's more human. She has the jaguar fur, but it's almost become her hair, and the eagles are no longer her face, they are what she holds in her hands. So recognizing in our humanity, we don't wear masks. In our humanity, being human itself is a divine birthright, something our souls would have wanted to try out. And in our humanity, in our actions, we hold different perspectives. Our actions can be the focus that now drives us forward. That doesn't make it masculine or feminine. It just makes it action. On the Sunday, we have the card that we had this morning collectively, which is Duality. And we have, it's a number 36. So we have that creative force of the Empress, of the feminine. We also have the choice here to recognize it for the angelic wisdom that it is, beyond masculine or feminine, to the more sacred she of living life in the 6. And from there, make choices. From there, decide. Does this bring me harmony? Does this bring me beauty? Does this bring me love? Does this bring me balance? In particularly times of duality. The card itself portrays Mary Magdalene dressed in a red dress, which is to symbolize the feminine, sat on a white cloth, which is to symbolize the masculine. In her hand she has a skull, and to one side she has a book where she is studying spiritual wisdom, but also holds the bones of physicalness in the skull. There's no flesh on the skull. That's what I'm being drawn to, and the candle is very small. So the card actually represents duality, many meanings and misunderstandings. I mean, Mary Magdalene for 2,000 years was seen as a prostitute, right? Because it fitted the narrative. Only now is she seen as a saint. How would that feel, to be seen so wrong for so long and then finally be acknowledged for who you are? Are you ready to receive that? Here the candle is very small. In great darkness, the candle is very small, and the skull has no meat on it. I recommend you read Clarissa Pincola's The Skeleton Woman. In that story, in order for the meat to be put back onto the bones, compassion is needed. Love is needed. Throughout this week, if there are any moments where you misunderstand the message, or you misinterpret or feel as if you're being unjustly misinterpreted, what compassion do you need? What love do you need? What nurture do you need? This isn't about masculine or feminine. This is about co-parenting. Co-parenting the child within us that is waiting to be born. The returned innocence within us that is waiting to be born. Okay, so I'm going to pull one card. Yes, of course, because it's linked to next year. So next year, yes, we have the Wheel of Fortune. We have the Magician. We have the Fool even. Being a 10-year, we have the 1 and the 0. However, 19 also adds up to 10, which is the Sun card, which is the inner child. How do we feel about that innocence? How do we feel about that side of us that we have seen as traumatized or injured? Are we willing to allow that wisdom to come back in from a different perspective? One card for us all. Without the imagination of our inner child, we reach our potential quite logically. Without the trust, the belief, the open heart, the unconditional love of the inner child, we really restrict anything that could potentially come through. Anything that we could potentially create, ourselves included. It'd be such a good place to finish there. Such a good place to finish there. So we have shamanic journey, purpose, attunement, and a vision quest. And I mean, this is like the inner child grown up. You have a woman sat on a horse. Rather than the sun behind her, you have the moon. So really stepping into the inner wisdom of our intuitive nature, of our emotions, and recognizing them for the light that they bring. We have 2 and 3. We have the High Priestess and we have the Empress. This morning, I think, was the first time I ever really saw the High Priestess, or actually it was Isis, as a mother figure. Can we see being between these spaces? Can we see bringing forth completion of these polarities as the most mothering thing that we can actually do, the most nurturing thing that we can actually do? And allow this to take us on a quest. The vision being ourselves, the journey being the purpose and attunement of the shamans that we are, because that's the other thing that's coming through. And it is a choice. It feels important to say that, because it is a choice. And there's coming a point where there are many out there that have been given the opportunity to walk the more shamanic path. Now, recognizing what that means to you, you know, first and foremost, acknowledging what that means to you. For me, the shamanic path encompasses so many different religions and viewpoints and healings and ways of being and energies. For me, shamanism is all encompassing, okay? And it's the fact that everything has a life and a soul. For you, that may be different, but recognizing first and foremost what shamanism means to you and whether or not you want to walk that path to discover that aspect of yourself, because it's within us all. There's that archetype within us all. You know, that's what the hermit is. It is the shaman, and this year has always been an invitation to find that within us if we want to. Free will is there, and it's going to come into play a lot more next year. However, I really feel a closing down. So the card next to it is portal, the infinite mind, and the awakening consciousness. I really feel a closing down of that opportunity soon. We can't live in between forever. We can't live in the space of polarities forever. There has to come a point where there's completion. That's the other side of this year. There is an invitation to walk a more shamanic path, recognizing what that means to us, and then deciding whether or not we want to do that. However, yeah, probably with tomorrow's portal, we're going to be really gifted an opportunity to see if that's for us and to decide once and for all if it isn't. It's not about deciding what world we want to live in. It's about deciding which world we want to create. And to do so, that's going to take different versions of us out. And acknowledging whether or not we're ready to receive that. Whether or not we want to be part of that. Whether or not we're ready for that. See you next week. Take care.